Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this episode 3814 AN. Today's date is January 8th, 2026, and the title of the episode is Supreme Court Making a Ruling on Tariffs. Tariffs are reversing the central bank agenda. Hey, listen, if you're over 40 and planning to retire someday, the window to protect what you've built may be smaller than you realize. Here's a question most people never ask. Is your portfolio built for what's coming next? Many investors in their 40s and 50s discover they have little to no exposure to precious metals. That means their savings are largely tied to markets, policies, and paper assets, with very little protection if conditions change. As retirement moves from someday to on the horizon, protecting what you have already built becomes just as important as growing it. That's where Noble Gold Investments come in, helping investors reduce risk by adding physical gold to their portfolios. Right now may be a smart time to talk with Noble Gold Investments. No pressure, no sales gimmick, just clear answers and strategy built around our goals. Visit X22Gold.com and build your portfolio for the long term. That's X22Gold.com, or just click the link in the description. And remember, past performance may not be indicative of future results. Investing in precious metals involves risk. Consult your financial advisor before making investment decisions. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, the private West Central Bank, the World Economic Forum. You can see that every day that passes, what is Trump doing? He is now dismantling the deep state system, dismantling the central bank system, dismantling everything the World Economic Forum wants to do. And every step of the way, you can see the central bank, the World Economic Forum, their plan for the world is completely and utterly falling apart. And Trump, he has built the tariff system to basically undo everything the central bank / World Economic Forum has been doing. And it's getting stronger and stronger. And of course, those individuals, those central bankers, the World Economic Forum, the deep state players, they want to stop Trump every step of the way. So yes, they went ahead and they put forth a lawsuit. The case now is in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is going to rule on the tariffs. Now, once again, there is a prediction market called Kalshi, and they're predicting, or 70% of the people that are looking at the situation are predicting that the Supreme Court is going to rule against Trump. Now, again, this doesn't mean everything's finished, everything's done. He has other methods of implementing tariffs. So this is just one area. So once again, you could see the deep state players, the central bankers, they know that the tariff system is the most dangerous system to their entire operation. And this is something that they're going to try to stop every step of the way. Now, they wouldn't be suing if it wasn't that big of a deal. Because remember, we didn't even get to the part where Congress says, okay, you know what? This is where you can allocate the money. Right now, the money just sitting there, and we're just accumulating this money at this point in time. So think about what is happening right now. If the central bank wasn't threatened, they wouldn't do anything about the tariff system. This is how you know the central bank is very, very threatened, and the deep state is very, very threatened because of Trump and what he has done here. And I do believe he will have other methods if the Supreme Court doesn't rule in his favor under this specific law that he's implementing the tariffs, because he has many other avenues to go down, which we'll be talking about in just a sec. But the other thing that we could see is that Trump, he's removing the United States from pretty much a lot of the programs that the UN, the World Economic Forum, put into place that especially has to do with the Green New Scam and the energy and everything else. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent put this out and said, effective immediately, the United States is withdrawing from the GCF. Our nation will no longer fund radical organizations like the GCF, whose goals run contrary to the fact that affordable, reliable energy is fundamental to economic growth and poverty reduction. Absolutely. And of course, what were they pushing? Solar power, windmills, you name it. And you know what was going to happen if we went down this path. There'd be no energy. We'd have blackouts. But you have to remember what they were planning on. They were planning on people owning absolutely nothing. They were hoping to reduce the population, building the 15-minute cities, having everyone stay in one location. And they didn't care if you had power or you had power. It made no difference to them. That's what they were planning on. And again, they didn't care about the power because there wasn't going to be any manufacturing in this country. Trump now has countered everything that they're trying to do, and we're seeing more manufacturers come back to this country. More jobs are going to be created, and you could see that, as we talked about yesterday, Trump pretty much shut down the entire plan where we won't own anything, especially real estate. And now he will not allow institutional investors to purchase the real estate. This is for the everyday person, which is very, very interesting. So start to put it all together, and Adam Kabisi already did this, said Trump has now proposed the following: create a 50-year mortgage, ban institutional purchases of single-family homes, call for the Fed to cut rates by 1%. And what does this mean? It means once all of this happens, we're going to see a housing boom. More and more people are going to purchase homes, existing homes, new homes, which actually is going to assist with construction workers, lumber production, tar, copper, electrical supplies, plumbing supplies, furniture, you name it. This is going to actually spur an economic boom in the housing market. And why is he doing this? Because once again, it's the opposite of what the deep state central bankers World Economic Forum wanted, which means he is showing the people the way forward is to own your home. Actually, for most people, this is their main wealth that they have. And a lot of people depend on this when they retire. They either sell or they take a mortgage out or an equity line of credit or something because they know they have this wealth built up and they worked their entire lives to build this wealth. And like we said before, Trump right now, he is going to be battling the deep state, the central bankers every step of the way. Yes, we could see that he's battling the World Economic Forum. Yes, he's battling the central bankers, and they're going to be pushing everything that they have at Trump every step of the way. And they especially don't want him to have this tariff system, which is going to overshadow the central bank system. And I do believe the central bankers, they're the ones who are most panicked by all of this. And what's very interesting is Kalshi, they put this out saying the Supreme Court to issue a ruling on Trump's tariffs on January 9th. And 70% they're saying that the Supreme Court is going to rule against them. And if this does occur, it doesn't mean Trump is trapped. It doesn't mean that Trump just gives up. It means he can actually impose the tariffs using other existing laws. And then, of course, what will they do? They will then go ahead and they will sue Trump and try to stop him with another lawsuit against what he has just done. So every step of the way, they're not going to give up. I think he knows this. And as this continues to happen, I do believe this is going to bring the Supreme Court into a place where they're going to say that no, Trump, under certain laws, he has the right to do this. But let's see how this all plays out. This is going to be very, very interesting. Hey, listen, if you're over 40 and planning to retire someday, the window to protect what you've built may be smaller than you realize. Here's a question most people never ask. Is your portfolio built for what's coming next? Many investors in their 40s and 50s discover they have little to no exposure to precious metals. That means their savings are largely tied to markets, policies, and paper assets, with very little protection if conditions change. As retirement moves from someday to on the horizon, protecting what you have already built becomes just as important as growing it. That's where Noble Gold Investments come in, helping investors reduce risk by adding physical gold to their portfolios. Right now may be a smart time to talk with Noble Gold Investments. No pressure, no sales gimmick, just clear answers and strategy built around our goals. Visit X22Gold.com and build your portfolio for the long term. That's X22Gold.com, or just click the link in the description. And remember, past performance may not be indicative of future results. Investing in precious metals involves risk. Consult your financial advisor before making investment decisions. So what are the different laws that Trump can actually use? Well, he has Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962. This allows the president to impose tariffs on imports deemed to a threat to national security after an investigation by the Department of Commerce. There's no cap on duty levels or duration, making it flexible for broad application. Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974. Through the U.S. Trade Representative, this permits tariffs in response to unfair or discriminatory foreign trade practices that violate international agreements or harm U.S. commerce. No rate limits exist, but it requires an investigation and finding which could target specific countries like China. Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974. This enables temporary import surcharges up to 15% or quotas for up to 150 days to address large and serious balance of payment deficits. It's seen as a quick interim option while longer-term measures are pursued. but extensions need congressional approval. Section 201 of the Trade Act of 1974, known as the Safeguard Measures. This authorizes tariffs if surging imports are causing or threatening serious injury to domestic industries. It requires a U.S. International Trade Commission investigation and recommendation with tariff potentially lasting up to 4 years. Section 338 of the Tariff Act of 1930. This allows duties up to 50% on imports from countries engaging in unfair practices that discriminate against U.S. exports. It's less commonly used and could face immediate lawsuits due to its broad interpretation potential. So the administration, they've already signaled that they might be looking at Section 122 for rapid implementation. So we'll have to see how the Supreme Court rules and what happens at this point. But you could see that Trump has other alternatives. And I do believe he will need some time to actually appeal the case and actually show that, no, we need the tariffs. But let's see how this all plays out. And we have to remember that going back in time, there have been many, many other presidents that use tariffs. They're called the tariff men. And this has been done over a very long period of time. But we'll have to see how this all plays out. And you could tell that the central bankers, they are very, very panicked over this because they wouldn't be filing these lawsuits. They wouldn't be going after Trump. I mean, think about it. He's bringing in billions and billions of dollars. Who's upset about this? He's talking about giving people a dividend from the tariff money. Who's upset about this? The only individuals that would be upset about this is those people that are money laundering and the central bank system, because the money launderers get the money from the central bank system. So the only entity that is panicked over this is the central bank. Now, of course, they're not going to come out and say, hey, we're going to be suing. They actually funnel money through the deep state organizations to have another organization sue the Trump administration to try to stop this. This is how this works. But in the end, I do believe all of this is going to fail and fail big. And I think Trump, he knows, and he's already put things into place just in case. But let's see how this all plays out. We'll find out very, very soon. Now, with everything that Trump is doing, and everything that he's doing with the tariff system, you could see that the U.S. trade deficit has dropped by 40%. And this is coming from the latest Commerce Department report. The Conservative Treehouse put this out. And says, as you review this latest data on trade, remember any drop in trade deficits has two big picture functions. First, lower trade deficits generally mean the accompanying GDP release will be stronger than anticipated because imported products are a deduction from the valuation of all goods and services created in the U.S. economy. Lower imports mean less is deducted. Secondly, and perhaps most importantly, a drop in the trade deficit created by diminished imports means more wealth remains inside the United States of America. We are not sending money overseas to import foreign goods at the same rate, and that money stays inside the U.S. economy. More wealth inside the U.S. provides the fuel for expanded domestic growth, more investment gains in USA manufacturing and USA industry, and the ability to pay higher USA wages. The Commerce Department is reporting today that the U.S. trade deficit for October 2025 dropped to the smallest amount in 16 years. A significant amount of the deficit drop was because of high value of physical precious metals. Gold, silver was exported, simultaneously with big offshore pharmaceutical companies dropping the prices of imported products, policy and tariff pressure. Some may question whether internal consumer demand has declined, causing the significant drop in imports. The U.S. productivity rate is still very high, which generally means domestic consumer demand is still high and all units produced have a lower overall cost per unit. Economic analysis can get weedy, so a simple way to look at productivity is to think about baking bread in your kitchen. If you're going to bake 4 loaves of bread, it might take you 2 hours, start to finish. If you were going to bake 8 loaves of bread, it would not take you twice as long because most of the tasks can be accomplished with simple increases in batch size and only minor increases in labor time. Your productivity measured in the last 4 loaves is higher. Economic productivity is measured much the same way, within what's called a production probability equation. If 2 hours of your time are worth $40, each of 4 loaves of bread costs $10 in labor. But if you make 8 loaves in the same amount of time, the labor cost is only $5 per loaf. When we see higher productivity in direct alignment with GDP increases, the increased production indicates sustainable GDP growth. And that's exactly what is happening right now. We're starting to see the GDP numbers move up. EJ Antonio, PhD, put this out and said, Atlanta Fed's fourth quarter GDP forecast explodes to a red-hot 5.4%, with consumer spending and investment rocketing higher, which means people are feeling good, people are investing, investments are coming in, GDP's moving up, productivity is getting better. So why is all this happening? Well, when you start to take a look at what Trump has done, and when you start to look at the new construction, you can see there's been a lot of factories, a lot of processing plants, and a lot of warehouses that are being built, which means there's a lot of jobs that are being filled right now. There's 136 factories, 78 processing plants, and 199 warehouses. And this was all done in 2025. These projects are all underway right now, which means as we get into this year and these projects are completed, it means there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be employed. That means salaries are going to go up, and we're going to see people very, very happy. Now, Trump, I do believe he knew all this was going to happen in 2026. This is actually to work against the deep state players, the Ds, during the midterms. And when people are getting their refund checks, when people are getting their dividends, when people are looking for jobs and they're seeing high-paying jobs, and people are feeling good, well, this is going to be very, very difficult for the deep state players. And actually, as these jobs are being created and more factories are being built, more processing plants are being built, more warehouses are being built, you have people in the construction industry, they're working. Those people that work in the factories, work in the processing plants, work in the warehouses, those establishments have already been built, so they're already working there, which actually adds to the economy. So the economy is just going to get stronger and stronger and stronger, which means you're going to see precious metals, you're going to see Bitcoin, you're going to see all of this move up. Why? Because once again, as Trump controls inflation, as Trump brings down the cost of energy, people are going to have more and more in their pocket. And eventually what people are going to start to realize is that inflation can be controlled very, very easily. When Trump starts to wean us off of the Federal Reserve system, the central bank system, and has the tariff system pay for your income taxes and you don't have to pay income tax, well, people are going to get the buying power back. And as Trump pays the debt down, well, people's buying power is going to get stronger and stronger and stronger, which is going to show people that the fiat currency is not worth what everyone thinks it's worth. And you're going to see gold, you're going to see silver, you're going to see Bitcoin start to really move up because people are going to realize that the fiat currency can be manipulated to a point where it's absolutely worth nothing. And what is the true money? Gold, silver, Bitcoin. And I think people are going to start to realize this as we move forward. And this is going to be a major problem for the central bank. Now, you understand why the central bank doesn't want the tariff system to come online. This is why they've had these groups going after Trump. This is all done on purpose because once the tariff system is fully operational and it's overshadowing the central bank system and Trump starts to wean us off the central bank system, well, people are going to realize that we don't need the central bank system to operate the government. Remember, he's shrinking the government, firing a lot of people, removing a lot of these different agencies, and more money is going to be coming in externally, which means we don't have to look internally to fund the government compared to the central bank system, which is a debt-driven system. So we will no longer have to borrow from the central bank system. And as we wean ourselves off of the central bank system, because we're not borrowing anymore, the central bank, well, what do they really do then? Not much. They become weaker and weaker and weaker. This is what they're trying to stop with the lawsuits. They don't want this to happen. But in the end, I do believe Trump, he has the upper hand. It doesn't mean everything goes smoothly. It doesn't mean everything's perfect. It means that Trump, yes, he has the upper hand. And yes, he's going to have to go through this minefield of all these different lawsuits that are going to try to stop him, just like he's done since he came into office, because I do believe this is one of the biggest battles. This is, if the deep state, the central bankers, the World Economic Forum, and all the institutions around the world lose the central bank system, they lose everything, and the people gain everything. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.